Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Danielle. For those of you who do not know me, hi, welcome. I'm so excited you guys are here today. Today is going to be my first retro review here on my channel. I think I've seen a few people kind of do these and everyone has like a slightly different take. So my take on these is going to be using an older palette in my collection and doing a review to see if it is something that I still would like to keep in my collection, comparing what I used to say about this palette to what I'm saying now. In conjunction with these videos, I am doing a 3 looks 1 palette with the palette that I choose, and those will always be prior to the review. I'm really doing those to give myself a chance to play with the shadows again, to kind of get in there and either fall back in love with the palette or realize it does not need to be in my collection. So the first palette I'm going to be using is going to be the Modern Renaissance palette by Anastasia Beverly Hills, and I am super excited. I also wanted to let you know that I will be doing swatches and things like that and kind of comparing what I've said in the past to now. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the swatching portion of this video first, and then we'll jump into kind of my thoughts about playing with this palette and what I really think of the Modern Renaissance palette. Okay, so the Modern Renaissance palette, if you guys did not know, is still available. You can still pick this palette up, and that's also why I like to do this one first. The Modern Renaissance palette retails for $42. It has 14 shades. It has 3 shimmers and 11 mattes. So we're gonna go ahead and swatch these first. I'm not gonna swatch tempera because it's not gonna show up on my skin, and I've used it quite a bit. I used to set my eyeshadow primer with that shade. I do not set my eyeshadow primer anymore. So much has changed since I've used this palette. I purchased this palette about 2 years ago. So it was just as the hype of everything was kind of hitting YouTube with this palette, and yeah, it's been in my collection ever since. So I'm gonna start with Golden Ochre and we will swatch there. So this first swatch is Golden Ochre. Then we have Vermeer. Then we have Bone Fresco, one of my favorite shades. And then we have Antique Bronze. The next shade I am going to swatch here is going to be Love Letter, Cypress Umber, Raw Sienna, Burnt Orange. I'm running out of arm space. Then we have Primavera, Red Ochre, Venetian Red, and then I'm going to swatch Warm Taupe right here. I have one shade left, and that shade is, I'm gonna put right up here, it is Real Gar. So those are all of the shades except Tempera. I guess I can try and swatch Tempera. I just don't think it's going to. Yeah, no, it doesn't really show up. But those are all of the shades from the Modern Renaissance palette. One thing I noticed is that a lot of them still swatch really well, which I'm pretty impressed with after having this palette for 2 years. I think that is pretty good that they still swatch pretty well. So some things I love right off the bat about this palette is I can do really kind of romantic, like red and pink kind of looks with this. Or I can go kind of really fall with it and do something a little more orangey, brown, things like that, as well as kind of do kind of grungy looks with this palette. I found when I first picked this palette up that it was pretty versatile, and I was pretty impressed. I mean, it's partially why this is so beat up. I did kind of want to mention some things that I noticed while playing with this palette, while doing my 3 looks 1 palette. Some of the matte shades are a little drier than I am used to. I remember them being a little more buttery, a little more smooth when I applied them. One of the shades in particular, Primavera, this gold metallic shade, is really crumbly, as well as Antique Bronze. When I go in and put my brush in, it's like the shade itself just wants to collapse and fall apart, which was not something I experienced when I first had it. Which is not something I experienced when I first picked this palette up. I think a lot of it does have to do with just the formula kind of changes over the years. I've had it for 2 years. I still love this palette though. I'm not gonna lie, playing with it again, I was like, oh, I remember why I like this palette. I remember why I picked it up. I remember why I thought it was so beautiful. But with it being so old, there are some kind of things that formula wise have changed. Some of the shades are just not as creamy. A lot of them built nicely, as you can see, most of them swatched nicely. I didn't really notice anything different there. I just noticed they're a little drier. But overall, I still enjoy this palette. I can't knock it. I mean, doing a lot of those looks, I was pretty impressed with how they still applied. My palette doesn't smell weird. It's not, I mean, it's not horrible, just that there are some formula changes. Now, if I did not love this color story so much and still kind of have this desire to have it in my collection, I think with it being so old, as well as just the formula changing, I think I would go ahead and get rid of this palette. I also just wanted to mention that the shadows themselves were fine on my eyes. I was using the Anastasia Beverly Hills eyeshadow primer, things like that, and it was completely fine. And I was pretty impressed with how everything kind of works so nicely together, so seamlessly. I really do enjoy this palette. I'm trying to think of other like cons to this, but there really weren't when I was playing with it, and I was pretty impressed with that. I mean, I know not everyone would be okay with working with drier shadows, but I think that's just something that happens when you are using an older palette and things change and you haven't used it in a while. I mean, I love this palette. You guys can tell I've hit pan on several shades. I've tried to pan this palette before. I just really, really enjoy it, and it's something that I would have a very hard time getting rid of in my collection. So, with that being said, this is my first retro review, and I am going to keep the Modern Renaissance palette. Have you guys played with your Modern Renaissance palette recently? How long have you had it in your collection? Is it something that you can see yourself getting rid of, or are you going to continue using it like me? Well, you will have to let me know your thoughts on this retro review down below. I think it's very interesting to kind of pick up an older palette and look at it and go, do I still like this palette? Is it still something that I see myself using? And using this palette, I enjoyed playing with it and kind of bringing the shades back into my life, I guess. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it, and there will be more retro reviews in the future. So I look forward to you guys watching those and giving me your thoughts on different palettes and things as well. Well, thank you again. Please give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!